Salvete. So in this video, we're going to be discussing exercise 23, doing part of exercise 23, and talking about the major uses of the ablative. So first, let's take a look at where we are in the book. This is the page before exercise 23, but we're here because it has the vocab list, which you'll probably want to refer to while you're doing exercise 23. And it's giving you a bunch of second declension, some of them second declension masculine, some of them second declension neuter vocab, and it's also giving you some prepositions. And we're going to be discussing one of the major rules of the ablative. So we have the oppidum, oppidi. It ends in oppidi. The genitive is oppidi, which shows that it's a second declension word, but you have to look at the nominative to see whether it's second declension masculine or second declension neuter, and it looks like it's a neuter word because the nominative has So oppidum means town, and oppidum would go I o, orm is a is, I o, orm is a is. Then we have Gallia. Gallia is Gaul, which is basically the area that we call France today, but Gaul is what we refer to that area as in English. So when we translate Gallia, we're going to translate it Gaul, but it wouldn't be terribly incorrect to say France either. Gallus, so Gallia is a first declension word. So Gallia, Galliae. And that's referring to the land Gaul. But a person who is a Gallus is a Gaul, a person from Gaul who we also call Gaul, right? A Gaul. And this is a second declension masculine word. Why is it second declension masculine? Because a Gaul is a person, and a person has a gender, and typically that, that are referring to a person from a place, the default is to use the masculine. So Gallus, Galli. Romanus, Romani works the same way, another second declension word because it's a Roman, referring to a person with a gender. Roma, Rome is the city, Rome. And so we've got words from all the declensions, actually, that we've seen so far, or all of the categories that we've seen so far. Now we get into propter. Propter is on account of or because of. Sometimes you can translate it as for, like I yelled out for hunger, I yelled out because of hunger or due to hunger. So that's what it means when it says on account of, because we don't really say the phrase on account of on a daily basis. So it pretty much means because of. Now there's a rule. Propter is a preposition with the accusative. That means that when we say because of something or on account of something, that something needs to be put in the accusative. So if we wanted to say on account of the Gaul, like not the land Gaul, but on the account of the person from Gaul, what we would do is we would say propter, and we would have to use Gallus, Galli, Gallo, Gallum, Gallo, us o. We would want to say propter Gallum. Propter Gallum means on account of the Gaul. We use the accusative. If we wanted to say on account of the Gauls, if it was on account of more than one Gaul, then we would also use the accusative. We would just use the accusative plural, and we would say propter Gallos, on account of the Gauls. So we would not use the nominative or any of the other cases with propter. This place in our book tells us that as a rule. When it gives us the word propter, or when it gives us any preposition, it will typically tell us the case we're supposed to use with it. Now, does that mean that various prepositions could be any of the cases? And the more prepositions we come across, the more rules, the more we're going to have to memorize? Not necessarily, no, because there are really two cases that most prepositions could go into, and even of those two, most of them go into one. And so basically you're just remembering that prepositions typically are used with two different cases, and kind of use the one of those cases unless we remember any exceptions where we would use the other case instead. So that's pretty much, so it's not that hard. It's not like they could be all sorts of different cases. Okay? And actually, the one that we're going to use with most prepositions is the ablative, and the one we're going to use with some prepositions is the accusative. So propter is a preposition. So we kind of began with an exception here, but most of them we're going to use the ablative with, and we're going to see that here. Actually, there's two prepositions that we're going to use for each from this list. So propter was the first one. Cum means with. Cum means with. Whenever we say with somebody, we're going to use the ablative. So with the Gaul would be cum gallo. Cum gallo. If I was saying with the Gauls, I would say us I o I arm is os is cum gallis. Cum gallis would be with the Gauls. The next one is post. And post is a preposition with the accusative. So post means after, if we're talking about time-wise, it's after, but it also means behind, if we're talking about like visual, spatial-wise. So it can mean either of those two things, so know that when we translate sentences. And we use the accusative with that. So if we're saying behind the Roman, let's say behind the Roman, post uses the accusative, so I'm going to put my post Roman with my stem and Romanum, post Romanum. If I wanted to say that's behind the Roman. If I wanted to say behind the Romans, I would say post Romanis, post Romanis. I'm sorry, post Romanos, because it's with the accusative, not with the ablative. Post Romanos, behind the Romans. There we go. And the last one is in. This is probably the one you're going to see the most. So anytime we say in a place, we're going to use the ablative with that place. So the way to say in the town, oppidum, here's the, let me put one next to it with the neuter endings. I, o, a, orum, is, a, is, I, o, a, orum, is, a, is. Good. The way to say in Gaul would be in, remember, for the place Gaul, we want to use Gallia, Galliae, which is a first declension word. So we would say in Gallia, in Gallia. The way to say in Rome would be, well, typically we would say, in Rome would be in Roma. And that's also how we would say with Rome. We'd use the same ending. We would just say cum Gallia, with Gaul, or with Rome. We'd keep the same endings because they both use the ablative. But if something was behind Rome, like behind the city, we would say post, and Rome being a first declension word, we would say post Romam. We would use the accusative because post takes the accusative, and that's kind of the terminology we use. We say an adjective, or sorry, we say a preposition takes a certain case, meaning the thing that comes after it needs to be in that case. Okay, let's look at exercise 23. which are a bunch of English, not full sentences, just fragments of sentences. And we're going to use some of these same things. We're going to do 1 through 6, which are on this page. That way, a homework assignment could consist of just what's on the opposite page, and then it's pretty easy. So we're going to do with Mary. Slide this over here. Okay. We're going to do with Mary, after the war, and with God. So 1 and 3 both have with. With is cum, and it takes the ablative. So I'm going to write cum on 1 and 3. And Mary, I'm going to write my stem, Mari. And then with God, de is our stem for God. Now, it takes the ablative. So for God, we're going to go us io o cum deo, cum deo. With Mary, the ablative is Maria with a macron on the A, cum Maria. Okay, with 2 is asking after the war. So after, we know is post. That's an easy one to remember because we use post to mean after in English. And post takes the accusative. I'm going to write my word post. After the war. Oh, I forgot war. Is war on this list? No, it was on the previous one. Bellum, belly. And it's a second declension neuter word, it looks like. So I'm going to write bell, post bell. And if it takes the accusative, that would be bellum, post bellum, means after the war. Now, I want to take this opportunity to remind you, especially if you're getting these answers down, following along with the video and getting the first few answers to this exercise, please make sure that you're writing the originals on your homework, okay? Okay, the next one's 4, 5, and 6. Postbellum should be really easy because we actually use that entire phrase in English. So in history, for example, we'll talk about the postbellum period, and that's the period after the Civil War in American history. That's typically what we are referring to when you hear people say the postbellum period. So that should be a pretty easy one. Okay, the next one, on account of the war. On account of the war. So on account of is that word propter, on account of, and propter takes the accusative. So here's bell again, propter bell, and that was the accusative as well. So propter bellum. Number 5 says in the town. So I know in means is just in Latin. What was town again? Town. Oppidum. So I'm going to write my stem in oppid. And, what was it again? In takes the ablative. In is a preposition with the ablative. So I need the ablative of town. And oppidum is a second declension neuter word. O. So in oppido means in the town. And our last one that we'll do in this video, 6. After the danger. After the danger. Well, after is post. Oh, I don't know why I put a period there. After is post. Okay, what was danger again? I remember it had something to do with peril, because peril was, let's see if I can do this without, I actually know the word, but I'm modeling how I want you guys to be thinking here. Peril is the word that has to do with danger, so the word in Latin had sounded like peril, periculum, periculum. So I'm going to go ahead and write the stem, pericul, and periculum was a word like bellum. It was a second declension neuter word. What does post take, though? What does post take? Post takes the accusative. And so periculum. So the nominative and the accusative are exactly the same in neuter words. So we should remember that neuter rule. So these are the first 6 done for you, and the rest are pretty easy as well. They should go by fairly quickly. And so that is exercise 23.